Is it okay to grieve in Islam? Grief is a natural and emotional reaction to the loss of someone. During a time of loss, emotions can be intensely painful, affecting many aspects of our life and our relationships with people. In the midst of the struggle, it is important to realize that grief is normal. To grieve is not an illness, and it is not something that is negative. Grief shows that you care deeply for whatever is that you lost. For some people, grief might be felt in spikes throughout the day, whilst for others, it comes up now and then. Every one of us experiences grief differently and on a different timeline. My emotional response to grief may be very different from what you've seen or how you anticipate you may react. Now, if you look at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam experienced many losses, and he experienced many losses throughout his life. And he taught us that grief is a real and natural emotional response. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam manifested his grief on different occasions and demonstrated the permissibility of showing our feelings and our sadness when we lose someone that is close and precious. So it's okay to grieve. And sometimes we need to allow us to grieve. We need to allow ourselves to grieve because grief is in itself therapy and medicine. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam visited Sa'd ibn Abi Ubadah during his illness, and some of his companions, Abdurrahman ibn Auf, Ibn Mas'ud, and some of the others were with him. And when Rasulullah came, tears began flowing down his cheeks. And when his companions saw that, they also began crying with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah said, Allah would not punish for the shedding of tears or the grief of the heart, but Allah will punish or bestow His mercy for the utterances of this. And he pointed to the tongue. So consider some of the losses that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam endured. The loss of both his wives, Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, in the year known as the year of sorrow. The death of 6 out of 7 of his children during his lifetime. The deaths of numerous of his companions. So when someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Although it might be difficult today to see beyond the sorrow that we experience now, looking back in memory may help comfort us for tomorrow. I will conclude by a poem that Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha recited at the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, allowing herself to grieve because that was her therapy. She said, "Such sorrows followed upon me that if it had descended upon the day would have turned into nights due to the extreme sorrow." She would also say, when someone dies, his remembrance lessens day by day, but by Allah, the remembrance of my father increases every day. Death has made a separation between us, and I console myself about the departure of my father, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then I say to myself, says Fatima, that death is our path. And if one does not die today, then he will die tomorrow. She would also say, when I desire to see you, I come to your grave. I weep and I complain, but you do not answer me. O the one occupying the grave, you have taught me weeping, and your remembrance has parted away all other sorrows. And although you are concealed under the earth, you are not concealed from my grieving heart. So it's natural to grieve, And we should allow ourselves to grieve within the confines of the limits set by Allah, because that in itself is therapy for the hurt that we feel. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.